U.S. President Donald Trump said he would speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin as he pushes to end the war in Ukraine. The U.S. leader disclosed the upcoming conversation to reporters while flying from Florida to Washington on Air Force One on Sunday evening. He said, "We will see if we have something to announce maybe by Tuesday. I will be speaking to President Putin on Tuesday," is what he said. "A lot of work's been done over the weekend. We want to see if we can bring that war to an end." Although Russia failed in its initial goal to topple Ukraine with its invasion 3 years ago, it still controls large swaths of the country. Trump said land and power plants are part of the conversation around bringing the war to a close. The Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from Sudza, a key town in Russia's western Kursk region that had been under Ukrainian control since August 2024, when Ukraine launched a surprise cross-border military operation in the Russian region. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces confirmed on Saturday. The recapture of Sudza marks another gain in Russia's military operation to push Ukrainian forces out of Russian territory. On the latest battlefield development in the Kursk region, the Russian Ministry of Defense reported that during the past 24 hours, its forces killed or wounded more than 220 Ukrainian soldiers there. The ministry also stated that Russian forces destroyed a tank, 2 armored personnel carriers, a combat vehicle, 5 trucks, 3 artillery pieces, and a drone control station. Additionally, the ministry claimed that its forces targeted Ukrainian military airfield infrastructure and warehouses used for drone production and storage, while also downing multiple aerial bombs and over 100 drones. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will bring a vote to the government this week to dismiss Director of the Shin Bet Internal Security Service, Ronen Bar. Netanyahu said he has had ongoing distrust of Bar. The decision comes after an increasingly acrimonious dispute between the men focused largely on who bears responsibility for October 7, 2023 Hamas attack that sparked the entire war in Gaza. The Shin Bet is responsible for monitoring Palestinian militant groups. It recently issued a report accepting responsibility for its failures around the October 7 attack. But it also criticized Netanyahu, saying failed government policies helped create the climate that led to the attack.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו בעיצומה של מלחמה על עצם קיומנו. מלחמה בשבע חזיתות. בכל עת, אבל במיוחד במלחמה קיומית כזאת, חייב להיות אמון מלא של ראש הממשלה בראש השב"כ. אבל לצערי, המצב הפוך. אין לי אמון כזה.
A charity in northern Gaza has been distributing hot meals to war-weary Palestinians during the Muslim fasting month of Ramzan. Palestinians in Gaza have struggled to feed their families as Israel's 2-week-long blockade of Gaza continues. Many have resorted to charities to get hot meals for their children. We were forced to come to the charity due to the scarcity of materials, is what Hassan Radwan, a Palestinian man from the urban Jabalia refugee camp, said. He said that the residents, most of whom live in tents close to or over their destroyed homes, suffer from a shortage of water, a shortage of food, and a shortage of everything, he said. The war has left most of Gaza's population of over 2 million dependent on international aid. About 600 aid trucks had entered daily since the ceasefire began on January 19. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard met with Defense Minister Rajnath Singh today. She spoke with NDTV's Vishnu earlier and talked about the Ukraine war and India-U.S. ties. Yesterday, she joined intelligence and security officials from about 20 countries for a conclave chaired by the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in Delhi. This makes her the first high-ranking official from the second Donald Trump administration to visit the country.
The situation between Russia and Ukraine, and we're all optimistic, and I've covered the war 3 times, on seeing peace in the area. Tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people on both sides have lost their lives. Be that as it may, if President Putin doesn't come on the table with the peace agreement which has been proposed by the United States, can Washington indefinitely keep arming Ukraine and, in a sense, allowing them to continue their fight?
President Trump is seeing this ongoing conflict with very clear eyes. And he has made his position and his priority very clear, which is to bring about an end to this war. So he is focused on peace. The negotiations have just begun. He's looking forward to success in those negotiations, not for himself, but for the cause of peace and to stop the killing of innocent and taking of innocent lives there. So he has the best negotiators working with both the Ukrainians and with Russia and with Putin. And we look forward to seeing the continued progress that we've already seen over a very short period of time. I think it's important to point out that under the previous administration, during which this war began, there was no effort. There was no effort at all towards peace. There was no effort to have direct dialogue with Putin and with Russia to try to bring about an end to this war. So already, in a very short period of time, President Trump has made much more progress towards peace than any effort that has occurred by anyone previously. So we're very encouraged by this progress, and President Trump remains committed to the objective of peace.
How much of what you're talking about now is premised on a successful conversation between President Trump and President Putin? I believe that might take place tomorrow or day after.
Well, as you know, with any of these kinds of negotiations, there's a lot of work that goes between people representing both countries or all of the countries involved in this situation. And at the appropriate time, I'm sure that President Trump will have a very productive conversation with Putin, once again, rooted in his unwavering commitment to peace. Ties between our two countries, the United States and India, go very, very far back. And so what we're continuing to see is a strengthening of that partnership and recognizing that the mutual interests of both of our countries are centered around peace, prosperity, freedom, and security. So now as we see a new administration coming in with President Trump's leadership in the United States, of course, Prime Minister Modi's long-standing leadership here in India, we have two leaders of our two great countries who are very good friends and who are very focused on how we can strengthen those shared objectives and those shared interests. Very shortly after he was inaugurated back into office for a second term, where they really set the tone and set the vision for where a stronger U.S.-India partnership and friendship can lead to. And so my visit here is really predicated on the work that has already been done, and I've been having great conversations with my counterparts here in the Indian government. I just met with the Minister of Defense a few minutes ago, and looking forward to visiting with Prime Minister Modi here later today.
And the New Zealand Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, is also in India. He met with Prime Minister Modi today. A string of MOUs was signed during the meet. Prime Minister Modi said that negotiations on an FTA with New Zealand have begun. Earlier, India and New Zealand announced the relaunch of free trade agreement talks after a 10-year break. The announcement of the talks comes as India has stated its aim to conclude trade negotiations with the US and the European Union this year. Luxon arrived in New Delhi for a 5-day visit till the 20th of March. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a podcast with Lex Fridman, has expressed deep admiration for Donald Trump. Prime Minister also asserted that there was a concerted effort to create the perception that the 2002 riots were the biggest ever in Gujarat, which he says was far from reality. Prime Minister also shred Pakistan in this podcast.
भारत और चीन का संबंध ये कोई आज का नहीं है। दोनों पुरातन संस्कृति है, पुरातन सिविलाइजेशन है, और मॉडर्न वर्ल्ड में भी अपनी उनकी भूमिका है। डिफरेंसेस तो होते हैं, दो पड़ोसी देश होते तो कुछ ना कुछ तो होता है। ऑकेजनल डिसएग्रीमेंट भी बहुत स्वाभाविक है, कोई ऐसा तो हर चीज नहीं होता, एक परिवार में भी रहता है। लेकिन हमारी कोशिश है कि हमारे जो डिफरेंसेस हैं डिस्प्यूट में ना बदले, उस दिशा में हमारा प्रयास रहता है। उसी प्रकार से हम डिस्कोर्ड नहीं, डायलॉग, इसी पर बात कर बल देते हैं। ये सीख है कि हमारा सीमा विवाद चलता रहता है। तो 2020 में जो सीमा पर जो घटनाएं घटी, उसके कारण हमारे बीच स्थितियां काफी दूरी की बन गई। लेकिन अभी राष्ट्रपति श्री के साथ मेरा मिलना हुआ, उसके बाद सीमा पर जो चीजें थी उसमें नॉर्मल से आ चुकी हैं। 2020 के पहले की स्थिति में हम लोग अब काम कर रहे हैं। अब धीरे धीरे वो विश्वास और वो उत्साह और उमंग और ऊर्जा वापस आ जाए।
North Macedonia has declared a 7-day period of mourning after a fire in a nightclub that left at least 59 dead and scores injured as authorities detained 15 people for questioning. And the Interior Minister said a preliminary inspection revealed the club was operating without a proper license. The fire ripped through the Pulse nightclub during a hip-hop concert. 1,500 people are said to have been attending this concert at the time. Only one member of the band that was performing is said to have survived and was being treated in hospital. The fire, according to preliminary reports, is thought to have been triggered by the use of special effects pyrotechnic devices. Authorities have discovered clothing believed to belong to the missing University of Pittsburgh student Sudiksha Konanki on a lounge chair at the Dominican Republic beach, where she mysteriously vanished over a week ago. This according to local reports. Images show a white netted sarong draped over a beach chair and a pair of sand-covered beige flip-flops next to it. Investigators stated that the clothing appeared undisturbed. Unusually vicious and damaging weather across multiple U.S. states spawned violent tornadoes, blinding dust storms and fast-moving wildfires this weekend, leaving at least 37 people dead. The dynamic storm that began on Friday earned an unusual high-risk designation from weather forecasters. Still, experts said it's not unusual to see such weather extremes in March. Wind-driven wildfires caused extensive damage in Texas and Oklahoma, and officials warned that parts of both states would again face an increased risk of fire danger this week as well. The United States has flown more than 200 immigrants, alleged members of a Venezuelan gang, to be imprisoned in El Salvador. President Nayib Bukele has said after Donald Trump controversially invoked wartime legislation to expel them. The deportations on Sunday took place despite U.S. federal judge granting a temporary suspension of the expulsions order, apparently as planes were already headed to El Salvador. The new Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is heading to Paris and London to seek alliances as he deals with U.S. President Donald Trump's attacks on Canada's sovereignty and economy. He will also meet with King Charles III, the head of state in Canada. NASA confirms that Sunita Williams' Earth returned, with curiosity building over the return of the pair of U.S. astronauts stuck for more than 9 months on the International Space Station. NASA has now confirmed that the duo will return to Earth on Tuesday, 18th of March. Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore will be transported home aboard a SpaceX Crew Dragon craft. A devastating attack on a bus carrying paramilitary troops in Balochistan has resulted in the deaths of 5 soldiers and injured over 30. This marks the second major attack on security forces in the region. The Balochistan Liberation Army has claimed responsibility for the attack. The Vatican on Sunday released the first photograph of the Pope in more than a month, showing Pope Francis co-celebrating Mass in the hospital chapel. The photograph is taken from behind and shows Pope Francis wearing a purple stole, sitting on a wheelchair in front of an altar. The Vatican said he was participating in the celebration of the Mass with other priests. No one else is visible in this photograph. It is the first photograph of the Pope since he was hospitalized on 14th of February with a severe case of bronchitis which developed into double pneumonia. It is also the first time the Vatican has mentioned that the Pope has participated in celebrating a Mass during the period. Police in New York City are searching for a person they say set a man on fire near Times Square. The department says the crime happened shortly before 4 a.m. on Sunday near West 41st Street and 7th Avenue. Officers spotted the 45-year-old victim and extinguished the flames. He was taken to a nearby hospital in stable condition. Police say they believe the victim knows the suspect. They declined to comment further, saying the case remains under investigation. Video from the scene shows the victim being treated for burn injuries to his face, chest, and arms. Nearly 7 months after a crocodile attack almost took her life, Munirpa walked to the estuary outside her home with her husband and children, ready to brave a reenactment. Munirpa, who like many Indonesians only uses one name, recounted how one early morning in August, she threw her household garbage into a creek about 50 meters away from her house as she normally would. She didn't see what was coming next. By the time she realized, a crocodile had attacked her. The 4-meter-long animal had already sunk its teeth into most of her body, sparing only her head. She fought hard trying to jab its eyes. Her husband, hearing her screams, ran over and tried to pull her by the thigh out of the crocodile's jaws. A tug of war ensued. The reptile whipped him with his tail. Fortunately, he saved Munirpa in time, eventually dragging her out of the crocodile's grip. People have long feared the ancient predators in the central Mamuju district of Indonesia's West Sulawesi, where the Budong Budong River meets the sea.